Hi everyone and welcome to another video. I'm sitting in the only place in my house that has a bit of lighting for me to film this, so yay! Darkness. Now, it's time for goals again. I set myself quarterly goals and we're at the end of the year, so I'm not only going to, as usual, look at how I did for my goals for the last quarter and set myself goals for the next quarter, but I also want to reflect a little bit how the year went in general. Now, fourth quarter, I had set myself 2 goals. That worked very well. Before, I had 3 goals, sometimes maybe even 4 goals. And at the end of the quarter, I always find myself realizing that I had completely forgotten about one. And now with 2 goals, they were at the front of my mind. I knew there were these 2 things that I wanted to do. So I'm really happy how that went. That's a process thing that I'm definitely going to keep doing. One of the goals was catching up with Invisible Cities, a project that I've been participating in which we try to read books from the countries that have been picked every month. And I was behind. There were still countries from April that I wanted to read, and I think for the countries of the last 3 months, I had no plans. So at the beginning of the quarter, I looked at all the books. There were some countries that I knew that I was not going to be able to find something that was interesting to me. So at the end, there were still 5 countries that I wanted to get through. Those were Ukraine's Grey Bees by Andrei Kourkov that I had sitting on my shelf for a while, and I'm happy I have read this one, so yay, me. I'm not going to talk about the books themselves in this video. El Salvador's Defriche, Coupe, Brule by Claudia Hernandez, also read this one. This one also had been in my life for a while. I also read for Angola, The Society of Involuntary Dreamers by Jose Eduardo Agalusa. And for Brazil, I wanted to read Adorait les cowboys by Carl Bensimon. Sorry for the glare, that's better. I didn't have time for this one. I didn't manage to prioritize it. It arrived rather late. I think it arrived halfway through December, despite me ordering it a little bit earlier. I'm gonna take this one with me to 2003, and the 5th country was Greece, for which I wanted to read The Third Wedding by Costas, Taksis. From what Greek friends of mine told me, this is spot on what I like, so I want to read that one. But apparently it's out of print in the 5 languages I read in. I could get it, but it was about 60 euros, and that is not a price I'm willing to pay. But I want to read that book. I'm not willing to look for another book by a Greek author. I mean, I've read ancient Greek, so it's not a, when it comes to I want to have read every country, it's not that. I'm okay with that, but I want to read something by a modern-ish author, and that is going to be the book. So I'm just gonna have to keep my eyes open and hope that one day I stumble upon it, or that the whole world really rediscovers it and wants to read it. So, Third Wedding, I'm gonna get to you. I'm gonna get to you. So out of the 5, I not only read 3, but I feel like I've caught up. I feel like I've caught up because there's only one book country that I'm taking with me. The others were just not really options right now. So I'm happy with that one. The other goal, similar thing happened in the sense that I did not really reach it, but I'm still happy about how it went. I set myself a TBR, specific TBR of 12 books, and the reasons for that was twofold. One, my interest in some of these books was waning, so I wanted to prioritize them. The other was that I want to finish the year with 1 book less on my TBR than how I started the year. At the beginning of the year, I had 31 unread books, so I want them to be at most 30 at the end of the year. And I did some math, knowing the Invisible Cities books, knowing my book club books, knowing the amount of books I usually get every month, I needed to read 12 books at the end, by the end of the year, additional, so 12 additional books. So like I said, well, I didn't say, but I have not read all 12 because I just didn't have the time. I didn't check that beforehand, but there was just no time to read all of those 12 books. I have read, I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to how many I read, but I only got 4 books in the whole quarter on my TBR, and 1 I already DNF'd even. So if I finish the books that I'm reading now, at the end of the year, I should have a TBR of either 30 or 29. So that means that goal has been reached, and that was the most important thing. And also some of the other books that I wanted to prioritize, I mean, I still read those. So despite not having read all 12, I'm still happy about how it went. I'm satisfied. Not by all, there are some, I'll show you, but some I would have wanted to read still, but there was no time. Anyway, the books that I did read. Philip Pullman, The Book of Dust. Wanted to get this one off my TBR, happy I did, have mixed feelings about the book itself. Marieke Lucas Reineveld's Mijn, lieve, gunsteling. Read, happy about that. This is the author of The Discomfort of Evening that I loved, and I also really, really liked this one, and I wanted to have read it because I think he might come out with a next book next year, maybe the year afterwards. So I want to be up to date so that whenever a new book comes out, I can read that. Pauperparadijs by Suzanna Jansen, a lot of Dutch books. Also read this one, had been sitting on my shelves, so happy about that. Antiracisme handboek by CHanel Lodik. This one had only been on my shelf a year, but it's about anti-racism, and that's a thing that I want to continually think about, read about, learn about, do something with. So happy that I did that, and I also read Eigen, Welwijn, Eerst by Roxanne van Iperen, which is about the Dutch society and how we're less looking out for one another. So again, one that I wanted to prioritize because now I can see the world like that through the eyes of what I've learned in this one. So again, really happy that I prioritized this one. I finally read it. Finally, it was only on my shelf for a couple of months. The two that I am still reading is my two Penguin Green Idea books. So we've got The World We Once Lived In by Wangari Maathai and There Is No Point of No Return by Arne Neas. But I will have finished these in the 3 days left of this year. That's definitely going to happen because I'm filming and everything. The 5 that I did not get to, I have different feelings about. I say 5, I'm holding 4. Ah, yes. One is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Yeah, there was no time, but I have a friend who I'm going to buddy read this with in January. They were going to read it then, so that was perfect. So I'm perfectly fine with not having read this one. Verhalen van Amersfoort. This is a non-fiction about the city that I'm living in by Abe J. van der Veen. I'm okay with not having read this one because I'm always going to be kind of interested in the history of the place I live in, so I'm gonna get to this. I'm okay with that one. Less okay? Open Ways of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. This one has already been on a couple of TBRs. I say a couple, I mean a couple. I mean literally 2. I started it at least. I already said this in a previous video. I'm at page 30 and it was interesting, but I just didn't have the time. And then when I look at the next quarter, I won't have the time for it either. So I'm sad about that, but it is what it is. It is what it is for now. It is what it is. I'm gonna get to you. I will get to you. My interest in this one was waning, so I'm disappointed that I haven't read this one. S'adapter by Clara Dupont-Monod. Every time that I read the back, I'm interested in it again, but then I completely forget that it exists, and it's small, so I'm disappointed that I couldn't get to this one. And then we have Herkomst by Sasha Stanisic. I started reading that one, but because of Headspace, it just wasn't working. So I'm kind of hesitating what to do with it. Don't know, do I DNF it because it didn't work? Or do I think it was a at that moment thing and when I read it later, it will work? It's a very floppy book. I like the book itself. And for that reason, I'm going to keep it on my shelf. And I will try it at a later stage. Also because people whose opinion I trust like it. So I'm going to give it a second chance later on. So 5 books I did not read, but like I said, okay-ish with most. Now, when I look back at 2022 as a whole, first off, setting quarterly goals worked very well. And I like the process that I went through with that. It's a far cry from the start of 2021 when I think I had 10 goals. And by the end of the second month, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So this worked a lot better. But there was also another thing that I kind of had at the back of my mind. And that was that I wanted to learn to quality-wise, delve more in books. There was a period a couple of years ago where I was really reading to read. I was reading because I like to read, but I wasn't tasting the books. I was more focused on plots and maybe characters, but whenever someone said, oh, I like the writing, I had no idea what that meant. So I wanted to work on that. I wanted to, first off, take my time and learn to recognize when my eyes were just following the lines and I wasn't taking anything in, when I wasn't focused, when I wasn't thinking about the books, I wasn't reflecting. And I did that this year. I realized, I started seeing sentences, I started recognizing different ways of writing, I started seeing how pieces of writing could be beautiful, I started recognizing just ideas in paragraphs, not just general themes of the book, but also, hey, this is an interesting thought, and then just, I'm not yet at the point that I stop reading and then think about that thought. That goes too far for me right now, but I recognize beautiful writing, and that's such a growth. I think that as a reader I've really grown in that sense. I'm really, really, really happy about it, but also because it's not something that's very tangible. There are some books that I really just had a pen and just started underlining things, and that's made me aware of the writing more. So there are a lot of books that I've read in the past that now I wonder what I would take out of it if I read it again. So I'm proud. I'm proud of that growth. And I think it's something that I'm gonna take with me for the rest of my reading life as well. I'm not gonna continue, I don't want to grow more on that front the next year. It's not something that I want to keep thinking about. I'm just gonna keep it as it is right now. One of the things that I want to do though, in the sense of growing as a reader, is there are a couple of authors that I want to read more of their work, because I think that if you read more books by one author, then you start, I think it will make me more aware of the different voices that authors can have. It will make me able to recognize those more. So I want that to be a general at the back of my mind thing this year. I'm even incorporating it as a specific goal in the first quarter. So I picked 3 authors right now that I want to read a book from in the first quarter. Those authors are Elie Shafak, which is very handy because I have a buddy read of this one planned. I've already read 2 books by her. I've read The Bastard of Istanbul and The Architect's Apprentice. And I like those. I like the fluidity of them. So I want to read more by her. So I've got The Island of Missing Trees on my shelf, so that's perfect. The other 2 authors, I want to read a second book by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I've read The Wizard of the Crow, which is a great, great, great book, and I want to read more from Ngugi wa Thiong'o's backlist. So I looked a little bit at what was available and the time that I have also, and I've decided to read an audiobook, because usually the goals that I set have to do with physical books, but I also, a third of my reading is audiobooks, so it would make sense to try and find things that work on audio. So I want to read, what's it called? The Perfect Nine? Is it called The Perfect Nine? Let me check, let me double check. It's not going to be that. It is that. So The Perfect Nine by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And the other author I want to read a second book from is Ted Chiang, because I want to prioritize this book. I know I'm going to love it. I've read Exhalation, and I want to read his other short story collection, Story of Your Life and Others. Those are the 3 authors, at least for the first quarter. Other authors that I would like to... There's a rood Porsche in my garden. There are other authors as well that I would like to read more from, but I think that I'll just do that as the year progresses. I always want to read a Kazuo Ishiguro and a Jane Austen and a Émile Zola, so those are definitely going to be happening. But I want to think about other authors that I liked the sense that I got from the author from and find other books by them, if that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Come on, you're not stupid. So that's going to be a little bit of a thing that I want to do throughout the year. In general, I'm really happy with how my reading went and the growth that I've went through. So let's talk about the specific goals for the first quarter of 2023. So first off, those 3 authors, and secondly, I want to keep prioritizing Invisible Cities. The reason that I keep it as a goal is that I've realized when I was making the list of the books that I wanted to read, probably in the first month or 2, that there are a lot. If I just look at Invisible Cities and my book club, that takes up practically all of my reading because I don't read as much as I think I do. So I was listing all the books and I arrived at like 10. Like, oh yeah, I still want to read this, and oh yeah, I thought I was gonna take some books with me from the TBR that I made for the last quarter. Yeah, none of that, it just wasn't working. But when I think about Invisible Cities, it's really something that I want to keep doing because I like to learn about the world in that way. Something that, I don't know, every time when I try to narrow down my goals, Invisible Cities is still always there. So I'm just gonna keep that as a goal. As of now, we just know what the countries are for January and February. So I want to, for Invisible Cities, read a book by a Brazilian author, either this one or the YA book in Portuguese that I got while I was in Brazil. The other countries are, so for January, if you have Cuba and Iceland, I now want to read Farewell to the Sea by Reinaldo Arenas, so that's for Cuba, which was actually a book that I'd already marked as I want to read. Same goes for the book for Iceland, which is going to be Independent People by Halldór Laxness, and incidentally my library has both, so they're on their way to me, I think. Well, not my library, but the Dutch library system, so I think I should get to them maybe next week or the week afterward. They should arrive to me. The other 2 countries are Thailand and Mali. I have kind of options for those that I found, but I'm unsure yet. So for Thailand, I'm hesitating between 2. Both I could read on script via ebook, but that's not generally a medium that I really like. So there's Added Dreams. There's a short story collection, also not my favorite, by Duanwat Pimwana. And another option would be Sightseeing by Ratawud Lapcharun Supa. And that one I could also maybe get from the library. So I'm hesitating between those 2. And for Mali used to be colonized by France, so I imagine that a lot of books I could find in French, but up until now there weren't a lot that were available or new, or my research just hasn't really given me great options yet. The best that I found until now, also because I could get it from the library, was Amakouel L'Enfant Peul by Amadou Hampate Ba. But I'm not entirely sure that that is going to be a book that I find interesting. And then there's always the question, do I then read it to grow as a reader because it takes you out of your comfort zone, blah, 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 or do I continue looking for something else? I don't know yet. And I also don't know what the countries for March are. I'm hoping at least one will be a country that I've already read, because then I won't have to want to do that, and that will give me some breathing space for other stuff that I want to read. So that's Invisible City. So at least 3 probably in January that I want to read. Although I liked kind of grouping it now at the end of the year and just doing a bunch of Invisible Cities one after the other. So maybe I'm gonna do that again. I don't know. We have to see. I'm gonna repeat myself. We've arrived at the rambly part of the video, but in general, I'm really happy about the growth that I went through as a reader. The learning to taste sentences and see sentences, to appreciate books more, that has been great. Yeah, I hope, I don't know if you've had a similar thing or how you feel about your reading in general in 2022. Are you aware of your growth as a reader? Are you already at a place where you're happy that you are? I mean, I'm still rather young, and I think my reading journey has only really started a couple of years ago. I think maybe 6, 7, when I really started reading again. So I'm still very much, I see that I'm still going in certain directions, and that's also what I like. I like that it's I like that reading is something that I always can go back to because it's always kind of there. There's always so many books. You're always going to find something that you love. But I also like that it's something that I'm growing in, that I'm developing in, that there are different regions that you can go to. So I would encourage you actually to think about your reading in the same way and think about, okay, but how do I want to grow? Where do I want to go next year? I think that's very interesting. So I'm going to stop talking. Tell me about your reading plans. Tell me about your growth. Tell me how you've been. And I'll see you in the comments. Bye.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.